When Cambodia is mentioned, most people immediately think of the temple complex Angkor Wat. In fact, there are several cultural monuments from the past on this territory, such as Angkor Thom, Bayon, Taprom, Phnom Bakeng, and so on. Angkor Wat is the most famous temple complex visited by tourists. But few people pay attention to the no less mysterious and even more fantastic structures, namely the hydraulic structures, reservoirs with the local name Baray. When we ask ourselves whether the ancients could have dug such a reservoir, we come to the conclusion that even within the time frames of the existence and history of this region, the numbers just don't add up. It would take more than 1,000 years of manual labor to accomplish this. Let's take a look at these megalithic structures from above. Historians in general don't like to talk about the huge artificial reservoirs next to the group of temple complexes, let alone discuss them. That's not surprising since such discussions raise a lot of uncomfortable questions. The reservoir measures 8 by 2 kilometers and is 5 meters deep. It could hold up to 80 million cubic meters of water. This is probably the largest artificial reservoir of the ancient civilizations. Its long side is oriented along the modern west-east axis. The view of the western Baray from above shows the entire reservoir. It's truly massive in scale. Despite the enormous size of the Baray, its geometry and alignment with the cardinal directions are very precise. The work was definitely supervised by experienced surveyors. There are also canals leading from the Baray. However, they don't look like irrigation canals, but rather like transport canals that connect the temple reservoirs with the Baray. Now this canal is silted up, but you can see it in satellite images. This is a diagram of the water canals of only part of the Angkor Wat area. The canals are about 200 meters wide and 1.5 kilometers long. Sometimes news appears on the internet that another ancient temple called Jungli has been found in the jungles of Cambodia. They have a small area there. Everything else is fields. The area outside Angkor is very densely populated, and searching in a limited area of jungle, unlike for example in Ecuador or Brazil, is not difficult. Maybe all the temples have long been known and they do this just to attract tourists' attention. Here, the eastern Baray is much smaller than the western one. The dimensions are 3.5 kilometers by 850 meters. There is also a reservoir in the jungle shaped like a human figure. Its size is about 450 by 450 meters. And to the south of it, apparently, there is another Baray, but it is heavily overgrown. The dimensions are 7, almost 2 kilometers. To the west of Angkor, there are also a number of temple complexes that were once surrounded by moats and canals. When you think about all this large-scale construction, certain questions arise. So why did they dig these Barays? And importantly, where did all the excavated soil go? Let's try to find answers to these questions. The main official version is that these are reservoirs for collecting rainwater and subsequently irrigating the fields through canals. Why irrigation? Because the main version of historians about religious structures just doesn't hold up. And that's quite logical. Besides, during the rainy season, this area can get flooded and turn into one big body of water. But the second question is much harder to answer. Where did we put millions of cubic meters of soil? There are no elevations in the area, which means the soil was taken far away from this place. It suggests the theory that these bodies of water are actually quarries for extracting construction materials. And this material is laterite. Here is laterite extraction in India, a statue of an elephant made from plastered laterite. Laterite is a clay-like rock with sand impurities. Here is masonry made from laterite. In Angkor, sandstone is also used here. By the way, where did they get it from? There are no mountains or rocky outcrops in the Angkor area. They brought it from somewhere hundreds of kilometers away, or as another option, they made artificial sandstone. Probably, laterite is such a material, a type of fluidolite which hardens in the air. A reaction with carbon monoxide too occurs and it turns into a strong stone, like the one we see in the structures of Cambodian temples. Here is laterite mining in China. Most likely, this is exactly how laterite was extracted, and these quarries in Baray were gradually dug out simply for construction and not just for temples. But then the next question is, where are all these structures? Maybe they are now underground after the Great Flood, and Baray was not silted up and had a much greater depth. And that's also possible. And then, it turns out the temples survived because they were surrounded by a water barrier that slowed down the flow of water and silt. Most likely we have the same situation here as in other parts of the world. There was a developed culture and civilization here, but then a cataclysm occurred. The surviving groups of people who came to these places later could no longer say who had built all this. When scientists in similar cases put forward theories that ancient aborigines dug this out to collect rainwater, it is an unsubstantiated claim. First of all, according to the official version, in ancient times there was practically no population in this area. Secondly, if it really did rain there and the reservoirs filled up quickly, then how could anyone dig when it was filling up with water? Anyone who has ever dug drainage canals knows what a difficult task it is, and here the scale is absolutely unreal. Logic suggests that all this was done by a highly developed civilization using technology, at least at the modern level, and the construction of the structures was carried out with the help of measuring equipment. Subtitles created by